Namaste, Haribol. So, here we are by a friendly reindeer in Røros, Norway. We were driving here this morning through the forest, and in the middle of nowhere there was a big herd of reindeer standing right in the middle of the road. Of course, we had to stop, and we've got some drone footage of that you can see. Very impressive. There must have been well over 100 reindeer. And this reminds me of a story of the ancient Vedic times. It's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the oldest Vedic scriptures. And it's the story of Jada Bharata, and it includes the idea of a deer. Jada Bharata was a great king. He was very wealthy, but he was a very saintly king. So at a quite young age, he realized that he wanted to give up his involvement and his complex life of being the king and go to the forest and just focus on spiritual growth. And this is what he did. He left his kingdom and all his obligations and passed them to others, and he went to the forest and sat there in solitude and meditation, very seriously pursuing spiritual life. One day, a deer, mother deer, came down to the stream, which he was sitting beside, to drink water. She was pregnant. As she was drinking water, a lion roared really loudly close to her. So frightened that she jumped across the stream, and when she did, she had a miscarriage, and this little baby deer fell into the stream. The mother ran away in fright, and the little deer is floating down the stream, and Maharaj Bharata immediately got up and went and saved the deer. And then he raised this deer very, very nicely, and he was always taking care of the deer, protecting the deer. And as this began to go on, he became attached to this deer. So when he was sitting in his meditation, instead of meditating on the Supreme Lord, he was actually thinking of the deer. Is my deer okay? Is anyone, going to hurt my deer? And so on like this. So at the time of death, because of this attachment, when he left his body, he was thinking of the deer. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, that which attracts the mind of a dying man determines where they will go in their next life. Therefore, Maharaj Bharata took birth as a deer. But it was a very special birth as a deer, because he remembered what had happened, why he was in a deer body. And therefore, he knew he had made a mistake, and he was very, very careful. So in the forest, he went and stayed very close to the hermitages of the saints that were meditating in the forest. And so he was always thinking of the right thing. Therefore, when his time in the deer body expired, and he left that body and took another birth, he took birth in a human body again, in a Brahmin family, a very, very priestly, elevated Brahmin family. And this time his name was Jada Bharata. And again, he remembered the scenario. How he was the king, then he took birth as a deer. Now he had another human body, and he was very careful not to get involved in worldly affairs in this life. So actually he prayed like he was deaf and dumb, so people would leave him alone. He was very, very big physically, very strong person, but he acted like a crazy person. And so people just basically avoided him, and they'd give him work in the field. They called him a man animal. They thought he was not capable of learning anything, any cultural knowledge or any spiritual etiquette and so on. So they just left him alone. One time when he's in the field at night, he's taking care of the animals. And a king came by on a palanquin. He was going on a journey. And there was 4 people carrying this very rich king on his palanquin. And one of the carriers of the palanquin developed a lame foot. And so he was limping like this. And so they stopped, put the palanquin down, and began to search for a replacement for this person. And they saw Jada Bharata in the field, and they looked at him, very big, very strong guy. And so they got him to come and take the position of carrying the palanquin. But because he was a great devotee of the Lord, he was always very careful not to harm other living entities. So as he's carrying the palanquin, he's always looking on the ground to see if there's any ants and so on. So he was making missteps like this. Oh, don't step on this. And it's not a smooth ride for the king. So the king becomes very disturbed because who is this guy? You're disturbing me. Why can't you walk like you're supposed to? And so the king had the palanquin stopped, and he began to chastise him. And then Jada Bharata began to explain to the king absolute truth, how you now think you're a king and you're in charge and you're ordering people around and people are serving you and so on. But actually, you're not a king. This is your temporary, illusory identity, that you're actually spirit, soul, and that you have no right to be doing what you're doing. And he explained that you're just acting under this false identity, false ego, and so on. And the king, being a very wise person himself, in general, realized this is not just some dumb, strong guy. This is actually a great saint, in this disguise. And so he began to ask Jada Bharata to enlighten him into the truth of life, which Jada Bharata, of course, did. And so the king, received great transcendental knowledge from Jada Bharata and himself became an enlightened person. So all of this idea comes from the reindeer, and the ones we saw this morning. But there's so many stories in the Vedic scriptures, this ancient knowledge of truth, to help us get the right perspective on life, how to see things, how to think, what to be careful about, what to avoid, and so on, so we can make true spiritual progress. So we hope you're having a happy day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Namaste. Haribol.